Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on Go Open. I will be as patronizing as possible as long as I believe it will build our viewership, which is really quite good. So thank you so much for all your support. Open source, fantastic idea. Television, an even better idea, where through some sort of illusion, I can't see you, but you can see me. Hello, Mom. Okay, good. So stick around, you can win some fantastic prizes, which we know will make you keep watching, because you get something for nothing, and that's how people work.
Open source software exists as a result of the combined efforts of millions of computer programmers, users, and software vendors from around the world. They share their intellectual property freely, and they believe that software should cost nothing and should enrich the lives of users. Open source software is the alternative and biggest challenger to closed source or proprietary software. It generally costs the user nothing. It can be distributed freely to anyone. Download it, use it, modify it, and give it away. It's a whole new world. Open source is the future of computing.
The business of searching for information has become the internet's killer app, which is short for application. Basically, that's geek speak for the coolest thing since sliced bread. We're not sure what was the coolest thing before sliced bread. We think it might have been bread, or it may have been something that we don't even know what it was, but it was sliced. So we're not sure, but it doesn't matter. But Google has made an enormous business using open source.
On the 18th of August, when Google listed on the NASDAQ, it made international headlines because of its phenomenal growth to a value of $30 billion. This company doesn't sell anything physical, but 80% of web users are clued up enough to use Google when they need to do a search.
It was quite weird when Google started out. It just appeared on the scene, because there were a number of search engines around. And it was basically, they sort of suddenly said, okay, we are now the search engine.
According to Wikipedia, the raw computing power harnessed by Google makes it the most powerful supercomputer known to humankind. Running at speeds in the region of 300 teraflops, Google's grid computer runs 3 times faster than the Earth simulator.
The thing about the speed part is traditionally what you do is take a very large computer and you would load the information into the computer and do a search on it and then give the results to people. The problem with that is that if lots of people come along and hit your site, generally you've got to start adding a hell of a lot of these very big computers in order to do the job. And very big computers come at large price tags. So where they started to innovate was to get high performance out of very low powered machines.
Google started out in 1996 as a university research project. 2 PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, worked out that a search engine based on a mathematical analysis of the relationships between websites would produce better results than other search engines on the web at the time.
The essential ingredient in the Google ranking system is to observe that pages that have got lots of links going to them are more likely to be relevant and interesting than pages that have few links going to them. This was their insight and the basis of their first ranking algorithm.
Google is now estimated to have more than 60,000 linked computers.
The main thing that they need lots of computers for is the processing tasks that are involved in keeping the Google database of web pages up to date.
The technology behind Google's search algorithm is a closely guarded secret.
If you're someone who's trying to make your website or your company's website appear higher up in the Google rankings, then if you know exactly how Google's doing that ranking, you can tweak your website in special ways so that it comes higher up the rankings.
One thing we do know about Google is how it finds things on the web.
You wouldn't think that the World Wide Web employs spiders to help you, but they're not as hairy and scary as this one.
Google's server farm has more than 60,000 Linux computers all running spiders called Googlebots. When the spider finds a page, it collects the data on that page and sends it back home to Google, where it's stored in a vast cache that pretty much replicates the internet on their machines.
This keeps the Google database up to date, so when you do a search, the whole of the web is being crawled for you.
Back at the end of the 90s, what made Google stand out from all the other search engines was how good it was at ranking the result pages according to their relevance. So, for example, if you type Johannesburg into Google these days, there are something like 3 million pages that Google thinks are kind of related to Johannesburg. But the top 10 that you get are, on the whole, very relevant.
In total, there are around 9.5 billion web pages, images, and Usenet messages in the Google Index, and this figure is growing every day. Listed now as one of the biggest technology companies on America's NASDAQ stock exchange, Google makes a large portion of its money through highly targeted advertising.
If you hit the Google website with a query, what it'll do is effectively two searches. The one is a search that you're looking for. The second query is to search for advertising that it might be of relevance to you. Basically, those two together, the one's effectively financing the other one.
But given the sheer size of Google's computer needs, it simply wouldn't be able to exist without open source software.
If you've got an enormous amount of machines, the software, the building blocks on all of those machines, is going to add up to an enormous amount of money. Google wouldn't really be possible without open source software.
With a mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, Google remains first prize for 80% of people searching for anything.
Our guest this week, our big gun, is a fantastic man. He's the founder of a thing called Creative Commons, which is kind of like the open source for intellectual property, but particularly for music. And he's a lawyer. I know, but he's lovely. Here's Larry Lessig.
Professor, thank you for joining us on Go Open. Let's dive straight into it. Record companies, the big ones, have said that MP3s hurt their bottom line.
There's been no independent study of MP3s that demonstrate any substantial harm that they're causing to the record companies. In fact, in Europe, record sales go up even though MP3 downloads also go up. So I think that we should step away from the kind of war rhetoric that the record labels have spun around this, and be a little bit more balanced and reasonable in understanding how this potential for peer-to-peer file sharing could actually be the beginning of a brand new industry. But what's bizarre to me is that policymakers in the United States, and more bizarrely internationally, are so quick to buy this totally predictable party line on behalf of a very small number of record companies.
Now, authors and musicians, producers who go under Creative Commons, do they now have to say equal legal protection using Creative Commons?
They have absolutely the same legal protection. Both Creative Commons and traditional copyright builds on top of the property right called copyright that the law gives the author. The difference between the two is that the Creative Commons license marks the content with the freedoms that the author intends the content to carry.
A lot of record companies would say they deserve most of that copyright.
If you release music under a non-commercial license that permits people to share the music but not to sell it, and your music then becomes famous and loved around the world, then record labels will seek you out to be able to find and sign you up for a record contract so that you can begin to sell your music internationally.
Once an artist perhaps is ready to go to that big record company, a lot of people say that those record companies are trying to take away that individual's copyright.
Companies around the world have increasingly insisted that authors have to sign away all of their rights before they have any right to participate in the distribution system that these publishers have created. So musicians in the United States face this all the time. In order to release their record, they're going to have to sign away so many other records to this one label. And if it turns out they're not a success, according to the label won't free them to do their work elsewhere. And one of the things we hope Creative Commons will do will be to revive this ideal that it's authors who should control what happens to their creative work. But what I oppose is the idea that the law should reinforce one particular way to distribute content and disable all the other potential ways that could compete with that.
Mr. Lessig, thank you so much for joining us here at Go Open.
Yeah, very nice to be here.
Coming up after the break, a special feature on e-commerce, very exciting. Plus we meet a lady hacker, and of course, don't forget our competition, which will give you the chance to win really big. E-commerce is an idea way ahead of its time. When we first found e-commerce, many people said it would never work, and it did fail when the internet bubble burst. But for those people who believed it would never work, we have one word for you, and that word is Amazon.com. Ah, yes. And now in South Africa, open source is allowing a lot of people to open up a lot of